There is a seed, an ancient grain, that powered an empire and was so feared by its conquerors that they outlawed it on penalty of death. It is a plant with a protein so complete it rivals meat, and a resilience so profound it has been called a superweed. For 500 years, its story was buried, a deliberate act of cultural and agricultural suppression. This is the story of a lost survival seed, and the real reason it was hidden from you. During my years as a botanist, I have seen the inner workings of our modern food system. I have seen how a handful of corporations have gained control over what we eat by controlling the seeds we plant. But I have also discovered stories of resistance, stories of plants, and people who refuse to be conquered. Today, I want to share one of the most powerful of those stories with you. The story of amaranth begins 8,000 years ago in Mesoamerica. Long before the Aztecs, the people of this land cultivated a plant with vibrant, blood-red flowers. They called it huautli. It was a pseudo-cereal, a seed that acts like a grain, much like quinoa and buckwheat, and it was a nutritional powerhouse. It was one of the 3 pillars of their civilization, as important as corn and beans. It was so vital that by the 1400s, the Aztec Emperor Montezuma received over 20,000 tons of amaranth grain every year as tribute from the provinces he controlled. To put that in perspective, that is roughly the same amount as the corn tribute he received. It was a currency, a staple food, and a sacred element of their spiritual life. But this is where the story takes a dark and bloody turn. In 1519, the Spanish conquistador Hernán Cortés arrived in the Aztec capital of Tenochtitlan, a city built on a lake, more magnificent than any city in Europe at the time. He was horrified by what he saw. The Aztecs practiced human sacrifice on a massive scale. At the top of their great pyramids, priests would cut the hearts from living victims. And on the temple floor, women would mix the fresh blood with amaranth grains. They would sculpt this paste into idols of their gods, particularly the sun god, Huitzilopochtli. And then, in a ritual ceremony, they would eat the idols. To Cortés, a devout Catholic, this was a demonic mockery of the Holy Communion, the symbolic eating of the body and blood of Christ. He saw amaranth not as a food, but as a tool of paganism, and he decided it had to be destroyed. When he finally conquered the Aztec Empire, he did something unprecedented. He did not just seize control of the food supply. He declared war on a plant. He outlawed the cultivation of amaranth, and the punishment for disobedience was death. He promised to personally cut off the hands of any farmer he found growing it. His soldiers marched through the fields, burning the vibrant red flowers, grinding the seeds into the dirt with their boot heels, trying to extinguish it from the face of the earth. Think about that for a moment. A food crop, a plant that had sustained a civilization for thousands of years, was nearly wiped from existence because of a religious conflict. Of all the treasures the Spanish took from the New World, the gold, the silver, the tomatoes, the chocolate, the corn, amaranth was the one they tried to erase. Why? Because they understood something fundamental about power. To control a people, you must first control their food and their spirit. Amaranth was tied to both. It was not just sustenance, it was identity, and so it had to die. But they failed. You cannot simply command a plant to die. Amaranth is a survivor. A few courageous farmers, the true guardians of this knowledge, defied the Spanish. They kept small, secret gardens, hidden away from the eyes of the conquistadors. They passed the tiny, resilient seeds down from generation to generation, a quiet act of rebellion that lasted for centuries. For 400 years, amaranth lived in the shadows, a botanical ghost, waiting for its time to return. And it did return. In the 20th century, it began to reappear, not in Mexico, but in the fields of India and Africa, carried there by forgotten trade routes. And in the 1970s, it was rediscovered by the modern world, rebranded as a superfood. Today, it has become a billion-dollar industry in food and cosmetics. But the story of its suppression is a critical piece of the puzzle. It shows us that the foods we eat, the crops we grow, are not just a matter of taste or convenience. They are a matter of power. The system of industrial agriculture, the system that feeds most of us today, was built on the same principle that Cortés used: control. It is a system that favors crops that create dependence. Corn, the crop that replaced amaranth as the king of the Americas, is the perfect example. Modern corn is a weakling. It cannot survive without human intervention. It is susceptible to drought. It requires massive amounts of chemical fertilizers, and its seeds are owned and patented by a handful of corporations. It is a crop that keeps you coming back year after year to buy more seeds, more fertilizer, more pesticide. It is a system of planned obsolescence applied to life itself. Amaranth is the opposite. It is a plant that sets you free. Let me explain why it is stronger than corn. Amaranth is a C4 plant, meaning it uses a highly efficient form of photosynthesis, just like corn. But that is where the similarities end. Amaranth is incredibly drought tolerant. While cornfields wither and die in a dry summer, amaranth thrives. It can grow in poor, marginal soils where corn would never take root. It tolerates salinity, meaning it can grow in areas affected by sea level rise and irrigation problems. It is a plant for a changing climate, a plant for the challenges we face in the 21st century. Researchers have called it a climate-resilient superfood because of its ability to produce nutritious food under conditions that would devastate conventional crops. And then there is its most infamous strength. In 2010, the New York Times published an article about a terrifying new problem facing farmers in the American South. A weed was growing in their fields that was resistant to Roundup, the world's most common herbicide. This superweed was choking out their genetically modified cotton and soybean crops. That weed was a wild relative of amaranth, known as Palmer amaranth. After decades of being sprayed with poison, the plant had simply evolved. It had adapted and overcome. The very same resilience that allowed it to survive the Spanish conquest is now allowing it to survive the chemical warfare of modern agriculture. It is a plant that refuses to be conquered. Now, let us talk about the protein. A 100-gram serving of lean beef contains about 26 grams of protein. The same amount of uncooked amaranth contains about 14 grams. So, the claim is not about quantity, but quality. Beef protein is a complete protein, meaning it has all 9 essential amino acids that our bodies cannot produce on their own. This is rare in the plant world. Most plants are missing one or more of these essential amino acids. That is why vegetarians and vegans often have to combine different foods, like rice and beans, to get a complete protein. But amaranth is different. It is one of the few plants on Earth that contains all 9 essential amino acids. It is a complete protein, just like meat. And at 14% protein, it has nearly double the protein of rice and corn. It is a nutritional powerhouse, packed not just with protein, but with iron, magnesium, phosphorus, and calcium. The leaves are edible too, and are as nutritious as spinach, rich in iron and vitamin C. This is the lost survival seed, a plant that is more resilient than corn, that provides a protein as complete as meat, and that can grow almost anywhere. So, why are we not all growing it? The story of its survival continues, and it is just as dramatic as its fall. In the 1960s, Guatemala was plunged into a brutal civil war that would last for 36 years. The state forces targeted the indigenous Maya people, burning their villages and their fields. Once again, amaranth faced extinction, and once again, it was saved by the courage of a few individuals. Mayan farmers, mostly women, poured handfuls of the precious seeds into glass jars. They buried them in their fields. They hid them under the floorboards of their homes. One woman, Magali Salazar, a Maya Quiche woman from San Jose Poaquil, hid a small jar of amaranth seeds behind a ceiling tile in her house. For years, the seeds lay dormant, waiting. After the war ended in 1996, when it was safe to grow again, Salazar retrieved her hidden treasure. She shared those seeds with other survivors. An agricultural community called Cachu Alum, which means Mother Earth, in Maya Achi, was formed. From that one hidden jar, a movement was reborn. Today, that community includes over 400 families from 24 Guatemalan villages, and they have not kept the seeds to themselves. They have traveled to the United States, sharing the seeds and the knowledge of how to grow them with indigenous communities in New Mexico and California, reconnecting ancient trade routes that were severed by modern borders. As one of the women from Cachu Alum, Maria Aurelia Situmel, said, "For the seeds, distance doesn't exist. Borders don't exist." This is the power of this plant. It is not just a food. It is a symbol of resistance, of survival, and of the enduring connection between people and the land. Planting it today is an act of defiance against a system that wants us to be dependent. It is a way to reclaim our food sovereignty. I remember speaking with an indigenous activist, Beata Tsosia Peña, who grows amaranth in a public garden in New Mexico. The seeds she uses are descendants of the ones shared by the women of Cachu Alum. She maintains a hillside public garden that is home to the descendants of those first amaranth seeds. She was given more than a decade ago by Guatemalan farmers. They are now 6-foot-tall perennials with flowering red plumes and chard-like leaves. She told me, "Our food, our ability to feed ourselves, is the foundation of our freedom and sovereignty as land-based peoples." She also said something that has stayed with me. This is a plant that could feed the world. During the pandemic, Tsosi Peña saw the power of food sovereignty firsthand. Many pueblos in New Mexico, including her own, implemented strict quarantines. To support her neighbors in navigating a food desert, she distributed seeds at the outset of the pandemic. People with their own gardens, especially in communities that had long lockdowns, felt more secure, knowing they had control over their food supply. This is not just about nutrition. It is about security. It is about peace of mind. It is about knowing that no matter what happens in the world, you have the ability to feed yourself and your family, and you can be a part of this. You can grow this ancient survival seed in your own backyard. It is surprisingly easy. Amaranth is not fussy. You can plant the seeds directly in the ground after the last frost, when the soil has warmed up to about 60 degrees Fahrenheit. Just sprinkle them on the surface of the soil and press them in lightly. They need light to germinate, so do not bury them too deep. Keep the soil moist, and in a few days, you will see the tiny seedlings emerge. They grow fast, sometimes reaching 6 feet tall in a single season, producing a magnificent plume-like flower head in shades of red, purple, or gold. A single flower head can contain up to 500,000 seeds. That is not a typo. One single plant can give you enough seed to last a lifetime, to share with your entire neighborhood. That is the definition of abundance. That is the opposite of the scarcity model that industrial agriculture is built on. When the farmers of Cachu Alum first planted the small handful of seeds that Magali Salazar had hidden away, they were shocked when the next season produced 100-pound bags of harvest. From scarcity came abundance. From oppression came freedom. To harvest, you wait until the flower heads are dry, usually in late summer or early fall. You can test this by rubbing the flower head between your hands. If the tiny black or pale seeds fall out easily, it is time. You simply cut the seed heads, place them in a paper bag, and let them dry for another week or two. Then, you just need to separate the seeds from the chaff. You can do this by shaking them onto a screen, or simply by winnowing them in the wind, letting the lighter chaff blow away while the heavier seeds fall into a bucket. It is an ancient, satisfying process, a connection to the thousands of years of farmers who did the same thing before you. And what do you do with these seeds? You can cook them like oatmeal for a high-protein breakfast. You can pop them like popcorn for a crunchy snack. In Mexico, they still make a traditional candy called alegría, which means joy, by mixing popped amaranth with honey. You can grind them into flour to make gluten-free bread and pancakes. The possibilities are endless. You are not just growing food. You are growing independence. You are growing joy. There is a woman named Sarah Montgomery who has worked with the Cachualum community for years. She noticed something remarkable during their workshops. When they shared amaranth with African refugees who had settled in Albuquerque, the refugees recognized the plant immediately. It had grown in their homelands too. She began to see a pattern. There was a lot of really similar stories of colonization and how seeds were taken in these different places, how similar strategies were used to make seeds disappear and create this domination and dependency, Montgomery said. But the thing about amaranth is, it comes up everywhere. It is a plant that transcends borders, a plant that connects histories of oppression and resistance across continents. We have been sold a lie. We have been told that we need industrial agriculture to feed the world. We have been told that we need chemical fertilizers and patented seeds. But the story of amaranth proves that this is not true. It shows us that there is another way, a way that is more resilient, more nutritious, and more just. It is a way that works with nature, not against it. It is a way that honors the wisdom of our ancestors. The modern seed industry does not want you to know about plants like amaranth. They cannot patent a seed that has been grown for 8,000 years. They cannot sell you fertilizer for a plant that thrives in poor soil. They cannot sell you pesticide for a plant that is itself considered a weed. Amaranth is a threat to their business model, just as it was a threat to the religious authority of the conquistadors. The methods of suppression have changed, but the goal remains the same: to keep you dependent. Real wealth is not measured in dollars or gold. Real wealth is the food that grows from your own soil, the seeds that you save, and the knowledge that you pass on to your children. Amaranth is not just a plant. It is a philosophy. It is a way of looking at the world that says, we do not need permission from a corporation to eat. We do not need a patent to grow our own food. We do not need to be dependent on a system that was designed to keep us dependent. Let me ask you something. Have you ever heard of amaranth? Have you ever grown it? Have you ever tasted alegría, the joy candy? Let me know in the comments. I would love to hear your stories. I want to leave you with one final thought. The story of amaranth is not just about the past. It is about the future. As our climate changes, as droughts become more common, as our soils become more depleted, we will need plants that can survive and thrive under difficult conditions. We will need plants that do not require massive inputs of water and chemicals. We will need plants that can grow in the marginal lands that conventional agriculture has abandoned. Amaranth is one of those plants. It is a survivor, tested by 8,000 years of cultivation and 500 years of suppression. It is a plant that has proven, again and again, that it cannot be destroyed. The women of Cachualum understood this. They knew that by saving those seeds, they were not just preserving a food source. They were preserving a future. They were keeping alive the possibility of a different way of eating, a different way of farming, a different relationship with the land. And now, those seeds are spreading across the world, carried by people who understand their value. From Guatemala to New Mexico, from Africa to your own backyard, amaranth is returning. This is the power of a seed. It is small enough to hide behind a ceiling tile, but it contains within it the potential to feed a family, a community, a nation. It is a promise of abundance, waiting to be planted. And unlike the patented seeds of the industrial system, it is a promise that belongs to everyone. No corporation owns it. No government controls it. It is a gift from our ancestors, passed down through generations of farmers who refused to let it die. If this story has planted a seed of curiosity in you, I encourage you to share this knowledge. The more of us who remember, the harder it is for this wisdom to be lost again.